Today on the Big 6 in 60, the Pistons tie up their series with the Magic.
The Detroit Pistons respond in a big way.
The Thunder go up 2-0 on the Suns.
The Oklahoma City Thunder getting a Game 2 win.
And Kalen DeBoer gets a contract extension at Bama.
No one really mentioned anything about Coach DeBoer until this afternoon.
This is the Big 6 in 60, the 6 biggest national sports stories from our local experts at the Locked On Podcast Network. We bring you the real story, why it matters, what's next, who wins the big game, and more, all in 60 minutes. The Big 6 in 60 starts now. Thank you for making the Big 6 in 60 your first listen of the day. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Download the FanDuel app now by visiting FanDuel.com and win $300 in bonus bets if your first $5 bet wins. The Pistons beat the Magic by 15 in Game 2 to even their series at 1 apiece. Khalil with Locked On Pistons breaks it down.
The Detroit Pistons respond in a big way and win Game 2 at home, 98-83. The score makes it seem like it was closer than it was in the second half. The Detroit Pistons absolutely took off on the Orlando Magic in that third quarter behind a, wait for it, 30-3 run. A 30-3 run in the third quarter, energized by their defense. They finally looked like the Detroit Pistons, the 2026 Detroit Pistons. They finally did. And we're going to get even more in-depth with this win. But right off the bat, biggest takeaway, or does maybe not biggest takeaway, but the first thing I can think of when I look at this game, the Pistons beat the Magic by 15 in this game, and I think they played good for one quarter. They played a good brand of basketball one quarter. All it took was for them to look like the Pistons we've seen this past year for one singular quarter, and they'll take off on the Magic. Imagine what will happen if they can play 4 good quarters at some point. Because the first half, there was some good stuff, but there was also a lot of bad. It was tied at halftime. They had only scored 47 points in that first half. It wasn't a great first half at all. And it was like, man, they're a half away from they're going to have to play a good half to avoid some disaster class conversations after this game. And all it took was for them to realize one quarter, that third quarter, we're the Pistons from this past year. We are one of the best defenses people have seen in years, and people are going to find out. Let's go ahead and turn it on. We got to lock in here. And they absolutely did that in that third quarter, and they took off on the Orlando Magic. Obviously, we got to talk about Cade Cunningham, who I think this game Cade just played was a better game than the one he played in the first game. Because a lot of his impact in that first game that they lost was in the second half. First half, I thought Cade was flat out bad in that first half. A lot of turnovers, tough shots, wasn't getting clean looks, was not nearly as good defensively. That first half, I did not think Cade played well. Now, in that second half, there was a stretch where I said, I feel like there was like a 7 to 9 minute stretch where he was looking like the best player in the world kind of stuff. But that was just for that stretch. This game, I think he was excellent from start to finish. Not only on the offensive end, he had 27 points on 11 assists, 6 rebounds on 11 of 19 shooting. He was very efficient in this game, 59.9 true shooting percentage. Missed 4 free throws. I don't know what's up with that. But played a very good game offensively. Was dissecting the Magic half-court defense, especially in the second half. Was creating open shots. Got Duren going in that third quarter. Got him a few easy looks underneath the basket to get his confidence going. He was fantastic, obviously, offensively. But defensively, he was completely locked in from the first defensive possession. The very first defensive possession, Cade is getting physical with Franz. Cade is fighting over screens hard. He had a few rim protection reps that were absolutely fantastic. One in transition, one on a fast break denying Paolo at the rim. They didn't give him a block for it, but I think that he should. Actually, they did. They changed it. They gave him a block tonight. Oh, the stats have come. Okay, so they update all the stats. I was wondering, because earlier I was looking at the block stats, and I was like, why are the Pistons, it says, I know they had 6 blocks in one quarter. Why does it say that Wu's the only one with blocks? I think the stats were just obviously messing up. But yeah, he had a few really good rim protection reps. Now, he did turn the ball over a little bit too much. A lot of those came, I'd say a few of those came in the second half when the game was kind of just out of hand, and the Magic threw a random press at him. He turned the ball over a few times. They can definitely clean stuff up. Don't get confused. We'll talk about that coming up. But I thought Cade was excellent from start to finish, not just on the offensive end of the floor, but absolutely was helping set the tone defensively. Then the next player we have to shout out. How about Asar freaking Thompson, man? It is as simple as just play him minutes. Just play him. What he did in that third quarter defensively, it's absolutely historic, all-time defender type of stuff. He was all over the place defensively in that quarter. He was at one point guarding Bane. Then he would guard Suggs. Then Franz started to get to the basket a few times on his matchup. Now the Pistons switched him on to Franz. Now Franz isn't getting there. He was all over the place in the passing lanes. He had multiple crazy good rotations, doubling down on somebody. There was one play, there was like 3 seconds on the shot clock. He knows that Paolo's back is turned to the basket. And instead of staying home, he knows that there's not so much time on the clock. So instead, he's going to run to Paolo, force a pass out, show his hands, be frantic. Paolo doesn't know where to go. Now it's a shot clock violation. Just those kind of things that just win the Pistons possessions. Get them extra possessions. Whether it's a steal, whether it's forcing a shot clock violation where they don't even get a shot up. He is an absolute all-world defender. Just all-world defender. And offensively in this game, his cutting was opening things up. Cade found him for a few cuts. He was attacking in transition. He had a few big-time dunks in transition. His dunk to cap off that 30-3 run, I thought the roof was going to go off in LCA. I mean, the crowd absolutely lost it when he had that two-hand dunk. He was exceptional. Absolutely exceptional in this game. In the first half, he was in foul trouble. He only played 8 minutes. And in those 8 minutes, the Pistons won his minutes by 5. And it was like, Asar, man, you're killing the team, man. You can't keep getting these fouls. Him being in foul trouble was killing them. If he would have stayed on the floor in the first half, I think the Pistons would have extended this game or extended the lead even before halftime. But they had to play so many minutes without him in the first half. And then in the second half, he doesn't pick up a singular foul. He entered half with 3, leaves the game with 3, and was absolutely impactful as hell throughout the entire third quarter. And give it up to JB. Asar played 19 minutes in that second half.
The NBA playoffs are here, where every possession matters, every matchup is magnified, and every game can swing a series. And right now, FanDuel is giving new customers a great way to get in on the action. You can bet just $5 and get $250 in bonus bets if your first bet wins. The app makes it easy to follow the action with player stats, trends, and matchups all in one place. And during the playoffs, the extra insight really matters when you're looking at stars, role players, and key moments. It just makes the entire playoff experience more engaging from start to finish. As we round out the regular season, the Celtics play the Knicks in Madison Square Garden tonight. Line is at -5 on FanDuel. If you want to go the other way, Boston money line is 176, plus 176 on that line. Head over to FanDuel.com to get started. FanDuel, play your game. Welcome back to the Big 6 in 60. The Thunder took a 2-0 series lead on Phoenix with a Game 2 win. Rylan Stiles with Locked On Thunder has the recap.
The Oklahoma City Thunder getting a Game 2 win over the Phoenix Suns. Jalen Williams, though, suffers an injury, leaves the game early, and that will change Oklahoma City's title hopes depending on the outcome of this injury. SGA got going in a big way, though, tonight, and Chet Holmgren continues to dominate this series. It is a Game 2 that doesn't matter, frankly, outside of the fact that Jalen Williams left this game early, because that's the biggest story. That's the only takeaway of this game that matters. We're going to talk about all the nerdy things. We'll get into the weeds. We'll talk about, the Thunder's back-end rotations. We'll talk about their defensive execution, right? We'll talk about SGA mid-range pull-ups. But we have to start the show with J-Dub, who started this game out super aggressively, who in this series, when he's been on the floor, has looked like the series' best player. A straight line drive right in the middle of the lane, gets the N1, cuts through the middle of the lane with a soft lefty layup in the front of the rim, spinning through the lane for the right side rim finish, sending the Suns into a timeout, takes Jalen Green baseline, gets him to get the foul, goes to the line 5 times tonight. That summarizes the kind of night that Jada was having when he was healthy today. He was aggressive. He was explosive. He was forceful. He got to the free throw line in a big way and had continued the trend that he put out there in Game 1 of looking like not only his old self, but for the first time in a long time, looking healthy. And that's what we were talking about in game one. That's what we were talking about in this game. I have it in my notes right here. He made his first 6 shots. You're seeing a healthy Jalen Williams, and this is how dangerous he is. I mean, that is straight from the Google Docs, folks. Follows that up with a pickpocketing steal of Devin Booker, giving Booker no option but to foul him. Dancing with the 6'9" Oso and taking him into the lane for a layup through contact. He was special in this game. He was. He was part of that 8-0 run that called the Suns timeout with less than 2 minutes into the second quarter. Got the and one to get 11 points in 12 minutes on 5 free throws in 12 minutes. He was incredible. The size-up step-back 3 is something that you haven't seen from J-Dub in quite some time because he was healthy. And that second quarter knocked down a catch-and-shoot 3 off of the gravity of SGA. Operates the pick and roll, finds Isaiah Hartenstein on the lob, great playmaker. But you saw in this game, for all of that good, in what was a game and a half of J-Dub being the best player on the court, of J-Dub being a ultra impactful guy, of J-Dub being someone who not only looked the part of a number 2 scoring option, not only was the number 2 scoring option last year, but looked better. Looked better on both ends. Made this team better on both ends. He goes for a transition layup and comes up lame, doesn't get back because of the injury. They get him out of the game. J-Dub goes to the bench. They're working on him. And then he goes to the locker room. And at that point, the ESPN broadcast had reported that he'd be questionable to return with that left hamstring. And then Mark, after the game, gave an update to the media about J-Dub's injury. And Mark said that they believe that he's aggravated his left hamstring, and they'll check him out in the morning and update the media as appropriate. Man, this is brutal. Right? Now, look, it's his left hamstring. If you recall, which you every day as well, he aggravated his right hamstring earlier this year and then re-aggravated that same right hamstring a second time. Now it's the left. Now, look, I'm not a doctor. I don't play one on television, and I didn't stay at a Best Western last night. But there's theories out there from the medical space that perhaps sometimes you overcompensate for one injury and it causes another. And here's the conundrum that you find yourself in and why it's really even hard to dive into, but we still will because we're a professional show. What actually happened on the court in Game 2, it's the unknown variable of what this means for Jalen Williams. That's the update. They think it's a left hamstring. They'll check him out in the morning, and then they'll update as appropriate. That's all you know right now. And there's a lot of different ways that this can go. What now being the most pressing question? Look, the Thunder will still win this series in 4 or 5 games. Perhaps you feel better about the Suns stealing a game at home now if you are factoring in a out or limited Jalen Williams. But they're still going to win this series in 4 or 5 games. However, Oklahoma City's defense takes a massive hit. You were reminded in a game and a half how disruptive he is, how frustrating he is for opponents to play against, his ability to turn defense into offense, his ability to get steals, generate blocks, get stops, get rebounds, push the pace. That was on full display. And then at the end of this game, when the Suns cut it to 10, you were reminded that who do you trust? Like, who do you trust more than J-Dub? This version of J-Dub down the stretch of games to help Shaq. Thunder are a really, very talented team. And they won a lot of games this year while J-Dub played in 33 of them, right? 64 games to be exact. And J-Dub played in 33. I'm no mathematician. You know this is not a math pod. I believe he played in less than half the games, if my math checks out. I get all that. But the playoffs are different. And this version of J-Dub was not only capable of being a number 2 scoring option for a title team, he was better than that. Through the first game and a half of his postseason push. Now, here's the thing. We don't know anything. This could be nothing. This could be nothing at all because the game didn't dictate him ever coming back into it. So truly, why rush it? Why put him back? He was initially tabbed as questionable according to ESPN. This could be minor, as in the rest of the series, which I've told you, the Thunder will still beat the Suns in 4 or 5 games, whether J-Dub logs another minute in this series or not. So if it's minor, it's just the rest of the series, then you have a huge sigh of relief sweeping across Bricktown, and it'll be an even more windy day in Oklahoma if that news came out. This could be long-term, or it could linger, which would be the same result. Because these hamstrings are tricky, and if this lingers the rest of the playoff run, it absolutely damages the Thunder's title hopes. Because the NBA is so competitive, these teams are so competitive that you need this version of J-Dub. You just do. Now, look, will the Thunder, pack it in and go home if something were to happen and come out to be the worst case scenario? In this case, no, they wouldn't. They still have a very talented team. They'd still win the second round series. They'd still go to the West Finals. But I mean, I'm not going to sit here on Locked On Thunder, a prestigious program, and I'm not going to sit here and pee on your leg and tell you it's raining. I'm just not. Like, I'm not going to tell you that everything's going to be all right, little Johnny. I mean, if J-Dub is hobbled or out, this team's percentage chance to win an NBA championship is diminished. Now, if it's minor and it's just the rest of the first round, and he's back to being this version of J-Dub in round 2 and beyond, then you've avoided a major crisis. You've avoided you've avoided the landmine. And that's the thing, we just don't know. We just don't know until we know. Now, if I had to take an educated guess, right, and this is just a guess about this series, it has nothing to do with the guess of the severity or the long-term repercussions or round 2. I look at this Suns team, and I look at this Thunder team, and I say, you know what? If this Thunder team is who we think that they are. Now, what do we think that they are? We think that they're the best team in basketball. We think that they're the deepest team in basketball. We think that they are overwhelmingly better than the Phoenix Suns, especially this version of the Suns where Mark Williams in question, Jordan Goodwin in question, Grayson Allen in question, if they can even play. Think of what that does to Phoenix's depth. I mean, they're having to play Malawatch in the series. Look, I don't see a reason for J-Dub to play the rest of this series, regardless of severity of this injury, unless he's like literally 100% fine, because I just don't think that you need to push his limitations. Again, I'm not a doctor. I'm not in the building on the medical staff. We don't have, the only picture we have of this situation is we know that J-Dub came in playing on a certain play on the missed shot attempt in transition, and we know it went to the locker room, and we know that they're going to check him out in the morning. That's all the information we have right now. But as an educated guess, I'd be pretty surprised to see him play again in the first round series. And then you get your rosaries, you say your prayers or whatever you may choose to do, send your good thoughts, and see what happens in round 2. See what happens in the West Finals. See what happens in the NBA Finals. Because they're going to need him. They're going to need him in a big way. But the thing is, in the short term, Oklahoma City should have no trouble putting away this series. And this is why it is important that they won game 2. This is why that despite this emotional blow, look, I think that sometimes we forget the human element of all of this, right? But these guys know what J-Dub's been through. I mean, they've been right alongside him when he's gone through these injuries. So to see him leave the game early again, it can't help but affect the guys that are actually in uniform playing for this team. So yeah, it got messy a little bit down the stretch. The Suns got it to 10. The Thunder responded well, and the Thunder won the game. And now you give yourself the chance to end this series in 4 or 5 games. You still are literally mathematically, again, not a math pod, but I know this, you still can sweep them because you have not lost a game yet. And that's why it's so important, because you get to sweep and now you get days off before starting round 2, multiple days off before starting round 2.
Alabama gave Kalen DeBoer a contract extension through the 2033 season. Jimmy Stein and Luke Robinson with Locked On Bama take you through exactly what that means.
There was talk about there was going to be all these extensions on the table today for the university, but no one really mentioned anything about Coach DeBoer until this afternoon when it was announced that Kalen DeBoer will be getting a buyout. It's a 7-year extension. It's going to pay him $12.5 million per year through 2033. By the way, that number is either going to go up or it won't be paid. That I'll get to that in a minute. His buyout, if he leaves before 2027, is $10 million, then drops to $8 million, then drops to $6 million.
That means, just to explain, because people are confused on that, that means if he leaves, he owes us. That's the money he owes us.
Correct.
not what we would owe him if he was fired, as in traditional contract terms. If he's fired, then we owe him the remainder of his contract.
Correct. So, first of all, let's talk about, I think you and I agree, the thing that's going to bother anybody, for those who are bothered, is the timing.
Mhm.
Because you're looking at it like, wait a minute, what has happened between the blowout loss to Indiana and now that makes you think he deserves a raise? Well, what happened with all the leading up to that, the Michigan, the Penn State stuff, all that, and it's also keeping up with the Joneses. Whether you agree or not, that's what happens. Coaches either get raises or they get fired. That's the way it works. I don't know a coach that's just been like, yeah, I've been making about $5 million a year for the past 10 years. Nope, doesn't work that way. And the other thing that I think people of our generation probably have the most problem with it, because we just lived through Nick Saban. And we also remember a time, at least I do, Jimmy, when people lost their collective minds in the 90s when Steve Spurrier got $1 million. And then also lost their collective minds in the early 2000s when Saban got $4 million.
Yeah.
I mean, hey, this is just the way it is, yo. I don't know what to tell you.
Yeah, I mean, Lane Kiffin makes this amount of money, and what is he won, But yeah, I think what, in my mind, in terms of the reaction that I've seen online and on social media and with, texts from friends, I think the reaction comes from, like you said, Luke, what has he done since the Indiana blowout loss to justify a $2 million raise and a multi-year extension? What has he done to justify that? This particular contract agreement, wasn't the result of Greg Byrne waking up at the end of April, post spring, and going, "Hey, you know what? I like the cut of his jib. Let's extend him and raise him." No, this was a direct result of what happened with the Michigan stuff, and to some extent the Penn State stuff, but definitely the Michigan thing, when Michigan, desperate for a coach, desperate. Remember, Michigan didn't come to a decision to fire their guy. Michigan's coach was fired in a sex scandal. They just woke up one day and didn't have a coach anymore. And Michigan's got deep pockets. And because they could fire the last guy for cause, they had really deep pockets over this. They didn't have to pay out Sharon Moore. I mean, he did that to himself with his criminal charges. So Michigan went after DeBoer very hard, and that was sort of close to happening. And Alabama's choices were: do we give him an extension and a raise, or do we let him walk? It's not about today. It was about what happened then. And I think when people see it in that light, they can see that it was a really tough call. Hey, some of you out there listening will go, fine, let him walk. That's okay. I'm not going to even push back on that. I mean, in terms of, hey, if that's your opinion as a fan and supporter of the program, that's fine. You won't be alone in that opinion. But it really was a rock and a hard place for Alabama to be in, because I would agree with anyone that says, what has he done to merit a big raise and a big extension? That's a fair conversation to have. But this wasn't about that. This was about, the offer was on the table from someone else, and we had to either commit to Coach DeBoer or let him become the new coach at Michigan. And then what for Alabama? And that's a tough spot to be in. And I remember saying that week right here on the show. We didn't get too far into the details because there's some things I can say and some things I can't say. But I remember saying on the show that week of the Michigan stuff, this is a tough week to be the athletic director. This is tough.
Well, and also there's a reputational cost that is, I mean, it probably can be quantified by somebody who's in economics, not me, probably not Jimmy. No offense. I think you're just a little less stupid than I am.
That's well put. That's well put. I'm not sure I agree, but we're dumb and dumber around here.
So, what I'm saying is the reputational cost of, what if Alabama had said, DeBoer, you're over there flirting with Michigan. By the way, I don't know that he was flirting with Michigan. It was his agent probably trying his best to get as much money for his client, which is what an agent should do. Then the answer is probably yes. But if, let's say, we had taken the stance of, hey, you're flirting with Michigan or Penn State or whomever, And, we just don't think you're worth $12.5 million. We're paying you pretty good right now. If you don't like it, lump it.
Yeah.
And what if he goes? And then now Alabama is the team that just got hammered by Indiana and lost a coach to Michigan. And who do we go get? Because whoever you go, first of all, you take a reputational hit in that people say, boy, Michigan's been drubbing y'all all over the place. They kind of have anyway without this, but the last few years at least. But I'm saying you take the reputational cost of, okay, the Michigan just put you in a locker again. And who do you go get? Because whoever you go get is going to be like, hey, I'm not sure I want to go there. I mean, y'all ran off Kalen DeBoer, and he was on the verge of doing some pretty good stuff with some good recruits. And by the way, a lot of his recruits just transferred because he left, and a lot of them went to Michigan. So you're left with a pretty bare cupboard. Who do you want to go get? I mean, that's the question.
Yeah, I think who, and that's exactly my fear or concern is, I think what you would hear from those people that are the let him walk people is, their list of who Alabama would have hired, I don't think is necessarily realistic, so that's what I would look at. I mean,
Michael Stein, 6331 chimes in on our live podcast. I really do appreciate him. He watches everything, and he thinks I'm one of the top 5 dumbest people on earth. And I might be, but I'm not sure he's qualified to do the ranking. He said that
you're not smart enough to rank it, so you wouldn't know.
I know. Even if I'm not smart enough to know if he's smart enough to do a ranking like that. Okay, but in the end, I think you and I can agree that, look, there was a poster on BOL. I want to give him credit. I had this same thought. He put it into words better than I could. He said that I'm going to find it here any minute, Jimmy, and then you're going to agree. Wow, that was great. All right. Yes, this is from Opie Archibald on the BOL message board. He said, is this deserved? ? Kinda not. Is this necessary? Totally. That's exactly right.
No,
that's what it is.
That's a great take, and I agree with it. I mean, in terms of how it's worked out, I mean, I'm on board just simply because I'm not sure what the other options are. I mean, I'm always for upgrading. Heck, we're in the middle, about to enter the midst of recruiting, right? That's all about talent upgrade. I'm for talent upgrade at every spot in the program. I really am. But you got to sell me on what the real options are. And, it's not like, I just think that so many people might think that our options are, like, I've seen several people say, well, D'Amico Ryans. I think that's highly unrealistic. I'm not saying it's impossible, but highly unrealistic. And by the way, what is the list of coaches recently? What's the list that have willingly left the NFL to jump into college football and the mess it is when you have one of the few NFL gigs with major stability? I mean, D'Amico's really popular in Houston right now, and anything can happen in that league, but he ain't anywhere near a hot seat compared to most people in that league. Plus, he's never coached a day of college football, not even as an assistant.
Well, that's what I was going to say. The last time we did that, Stallings wasn't the coach of the Cardinals when he came to us, was he?
He would have been fired.
He'd been fired,
yeah. But he had extensive college experience.
But I'm thinking Ray Perkins. And
he had college.
It's actually Nick Saban.
Well, they were all coming from the NFL, but everyone that you just named, Saban, Perkins, Stallings, they all had NFL jobs, but they all had extensive college experience. D'Amico's got none.
Well, exactly. And like I said, it's difficult to make that transition sometimes. And now you can say, well, the college is more like the NFL than it ever was.
Welcome back to the Big 6 in 60. The Las Vegas Raiders are officially on the clock with the number 1 pick in the NFL draft. Your boy Q with Locked On Raiders takes a look at a pick that will likely end up being Fernando Mendoza.
News and notes of the day, and it really only has to do with Fernando Mendoza, right? We've been talking, waiting to get to this moment. The time is now. The Raiders have the number 1 overall pick, and it's only going to be 8 minutes from the moment that Roger Goodell says the Las Vegas Raiders are now on the clock. They only have 8 minutes to turn in their card, and I don't think they're going to need 8 seconds to turn in their card, but I'm sure they're going to go ahead and exhaust it and let the 8 minutes run out to make it a little bit better for theater. I know there'll be a little bit of anxiety when it comes to Raider Nation because, well, as much as we all believe that Fernando Mendoza is going to be the guy until we actually hear Roger Goodell say quarterback Fernando Mendoza, Indiana, then, there's always a chance that maybe it's not. But I'm 99.999% sure that Fernando Mendoza is going to be the guy. But that's what's the beauty of this. I'll be so happy when I don't have to say 99.9%. I'll be happy when I can say 100% without a doubt Fernando Mendoza is the Raiders quarterback. Now, again, I fully believe that that's going to be what's going to happen. But I promise you, after his name is announced, I'm going to get a bunch of text messages. I'm going to get a bunch of tweets. I'm going to get some emails that say, Q, we did it. Q, we did it. Q, we did it. Fernando's our guy. We got our guy. I promise you that's what's going to happen. And that's just the excitement of Raider Nation knowing that the franchise quarterback is going to be in the mix. And he's a guy that the Raiders have been looking for ever since they sat down Derek Carr. They never had a succession plan. When they decided they were going to sit him down, they didn't know what direction they were going to go. And they had a terrible season in 2025. They earned the number 1 overall pick. And now they have an opportunity to get their franchise quarterback. And getting that quarterback will give everybody hope. No matter who you talk to, no matter what team it is. When I talk to people that covered the Commanders, when they got Jaden Daniels, they got hope with that quarterback. Bears, they got hope with Caleb Williams. Bryce Young in Carolina, they got hope. Like every time a team gets a quarterback at that top spot or the top 2, top 3, whatever the case may be, that guy that they believe is that franchise quarterback, they get hope. The franchise get hope. The guys in the locker room get excited because here comes the guy that's going to come and change the trajectory of this team, and that's going to be Fernando Mendoza's job moving forward. So look forward to that. I did want you to hear Fernando Mendoza, who's been on really a media tour. No, he's not here in Pittsburgh. He's staying home in Miami with his family, which is fine. That's his, option, his choice. There'll be plenty of cameras. You'll hear from him right after he gets a selection. Matter of fact, he'll be on a Zoom call with Raiders media, so we'll be part of that as well. And there'll be plenty of time that you'll hear from the franchise quarterback. But he was on the Dan Patrick Show on Wednesday. And I think DP, first of all, does a great job when it comes to interviewing. I think he's the best in the business. I like to think that I do a pretty good job interviewing folks, but Dan Patrick is the best of the best. And so I just want you to hear a couple minutes of the interaction, the back and forth between Dan Patrick and Fernando Mendoza. Check it out.
Have you met Tom Brady?
I have. I've met him in the official 30 visit at the Raiders.
And how did that go?
It was fantastic. He gave me the message that he's going to push me and he's not going to be all lovey-dovey. He's going to push me and that if the Raiders draft me, he is going to be, a mentor and wants to pour into whatever quarterback the Raiders have, whether it's me, whether they draft somebody else, or like the Raiders, they also signed Kirk Cousins.
What was your reaction when they brought in Kirk Cousins?
Well, if I'm lucky enough to go to the Raiders, I think it'd be a great opportunity to be able to learn from someone who's had so much success throughout the years and who I think has a very similar playing style as me. I've been able to watch his film. There was 2 years ago where I watched all his Minnesota Vikings pass tape, every single pass, whether it's incomplete, completion, throughout the entire season, which is a lot because NFL is a lot of games.
Wait. So you went back and looked at all of his throws?
Yeah, this is actually funny enough. This was maybe some foreshadowing, but this was a year ago when I was back in California, and there were a couple comparisons on, hey, you play a little bit like Kirk Cousins, Sam Darnold, just from our NFL guys. And so at that point, I was like, okay, let me watch these guys and see what they do, see what they do good and see what they do, they need improvement on. And so in this aspect, it was for my free time. And I love watching NFL ball. So after I was done with my process, I would watch 30 minutes or an hour of Kirk Cousins or Sam Darnold. And this past year, it was Matthew Stafford. Not saying I play like Matthew Stafford, but just someone great to learn from. And those experiences have helped me a lot, especially to get adjusted to the college games and to see how quarterbacks process the defense.
Love what I heard right there from Fernando Mendoza. And you see it didn't even take a lot of words for Dan Patrick to get some good information out of Fernando, and hearing that he's studying these quarterbacks, Kirk Cousins, right? Sam Darnold, also studying who was the other quarterback? Oh, Matt Stafford this year. How can I forget Matt Stafford, the MVP? But, I mean, just the fact that he's studying film, he's checking them out, he's looking at these guys because, this is, who you kind of remind us of, and he goes and checks out the film. He's a student of the game. You think that's not going to be something that this franchise is going to really appreciate? You think that's not going to be something that Clint Kubiak's going to appreciate? He's already diving into the nuances of the Clint Kubiak offense, so he's ready to hit the ground running. Does that mean he's going to start day one? No, not at all. But it just lets you know the kind of person that he is. I mentioned being out at the community event on a Wednesday. It was really cool. They have it every single year, the day before the draft starts. It's the last time that the players get an opportunity to go out there and just kind of be kids again, go out there and play. It's the Play 60 event that they always have. Special Olympics are out there as well. It's just, again, it's a lot of fun. You get to catch up with the prospects. You get to catch up with analysts, and we did that. And one of the analysts that I caught up with was Joel Klatt, and I had a little back and forth with him about Fernando Mendoza. This is just a couple minutes of the back and forth between myself and Joel Klatt talking Fernando Mendoza. Check it out.
You mentioned on your show about Fernando Mendoza and the big moments and how he steps up. What is it about him where he's able to capture those moments?
I don't know, man. If I knew, I would bottle it up and sell it because it was remarkable how consistent he was when everything was on the line.
Right.
It started at, Iowa. Mm-hmm. He throws a pick, huge mistake, comes back, drives him down the field, wins the game against a really good defense in a tough location. Throws a pick 6 against Oregon, comes back next drive, right down the field, beautiful throw to Elijah Surratt, wins the game on the road against Oregon. Penn State throws a pick, comes back 2nd and 15, drives down the field. It's the loudest I've ever heard Beaver Stadium. Drives down the field, makes an incredible throw to Omar Cooper. They win the game. Ohio State, facing the best defense in the country, throws a slot fade for a touchdown, a 3rd down to Charlie Becker on the back shoulder. It happened time and time again, and then in the 4th down national championship situation, he takes it himself. I can't remember a time when it was literally 100%. When a play needed to be made, it was made, and that's a trait that you just can't coach.
How does he translate into the NFL with Clint Kubiak and that offense in Vegas?
I think Fernando showed the ability to develop and grow last year from what he was at Cal to what he was at Indiana. Trust me when I tell you this, when you talk with Fernando, all he cares about is getting better every single day. He doesn't really care about all the accolades and all the big stuff that we focus on, being undefeated, being national champions. What he focused on every single day, and he would say it this way too, and I know it's a coach speak kind of nerdy answer, but he would say, I'm focusing on being the best Fernando Mendoza I can be today.
Right.
And to be honest, I think that resonates with that minority owner in Vegas with Tom Brady, because that's exactly the way Tom Brady was.
I thought that was some more good information to bring to the table about Fernando Mendoza. Joel Klatt is on the call quite a bit for Big Ten games, so obviously he saw a lot of Fernando Mendoza there in Indiana, and he on his show said that there's something about Mendoza when you got to have it moments, he has it. And you heard him rattle off the games where he had to have it after making big mistakes, was able to bounce back and clear it and just have that moment that his team needed and helped them go 16-0. He won the Heisman, but more importantly, they won the national championship game. And just the fact that he, every single day, even though it sounds like corny coach speak, he just wants to be the better version of Fernando Mendoza. And you heard what Joel Klatt said. I think that minority owner, Tom Brady, is going to really like that because that's what Tom Brady was like. Now, look, by no means am I saying that he's going to end up being Tom Brady, but I always say I'll take the guy who's going to work his tail off as opposed to the guy who might have the most talent, right? I mean, and I say it about myself all the time. I ain't the most talented dude, but I'm not going to be outworked, right? And it sounds like Fernando Mendoza is ready to take this quarterback job, take this opportunity that he's going to have with the silver and black that we'll hear in a matter of hours, not days, not months, not weeks, but hours. And depending on what time you're listening to it, minutes, right? 5 p.m. Pacific time, 8 p.m. Eastern time. That's when the draft officially gets started. Cannot wait to be backstage and ready for everything that's going to go down in round number 1. Because, look, Fernando Mendoza will be the first name called, but there'll still be 31 more picks after that.
Welcome back to the Big 6 in 60. The Jets are sorting through their options at number 2, with both David Bailey and Arvell Reese tied closely to the pick. But John Butchko with Locked On Jets says there are even more options for New York.
4 options the New York Jets have with the number 2 pick in the NFL draft. And this is a very exciting day. It has been a long wait. In many ways, Jets fans have been waiting since September or October because the Jets, of course, started the 2025 season 0-7. The season was really over before it began. So we got an early start looking forward to the draft. And now here we are. The Jets own the 2nd pick and the 16th pick in the 2026 NFL draft. There will be at least 2 new players for the Jets tonight, and who knows, maybe there will be a third. Of course, the Jets currently own the number 1 pick in the 2nd round, so it would not be hard to trade up and get a 3rd pick in round 1. Let's start first things first. The Jets do own the 2nd pick in the draft, and this is in many ways the point where the real draft begins. And the reason I say that is there is not any mystery in what's going to happen with the number 1 pick. The Raiders will pick Fernando Mendoza, the Heisman Trophy winner, the national championship quarterback out of Indiana. Mendoza will be the quarterback of the future for the Raiders. The Jets will have to wait for their quarterback of the future. I don't think there's any chance they're taking somebody number 2 overall. Through the entire process, I wondered whether maybe Ty Simpson or another quarterback might emerge as a potential option at number 2 overall. I think we've seen that that's not going to happen. So that leaves the Jets with 4 options. One option is taking Arvell Reese. If you were to ask me as I'm recording this podcast what the most likely scenario is, I think it would be the Jets taking Reese. Sometimes what happens is the most obvious thing. Reese has been the most decorated player of the options the Jets have. He's been the guy who's gotten most of the buzz. He's gotten most of the hype. A lot of talent evaluators think he is the best non-Mendoza player available to the Jets. So my guess is it's going to be Arvell Reese. But there, of course, there is another option. If we're looking at a pass rusher, it's David Bailey out of Texas Tech. And through much of this process, Bailey has kind of been the alternative to Reese. Would it be a shock to me if the Jets pick Bailey tonight? No. My guess right now is it's Reese, but I'm not going to be floored if the Jets end up picking Bailey. Option number 3 would be go with a player who's neither Reese nor Bailey. Now, this would be a surprise, and there are many different options. You could go with a blue chip prospect at a non-premium position. The 3 who come to mind are Sonny Styles out of Ohio State, Caleb Downs out of Ohio State, and Jeremiah Love out of Notre Dame. Those 3 are respectively a safety, a linebacker, and a running back. I think it would be a surprise to see the Jets go with a player at one of those positions at number 2 overall. But this is an unusual draft. I don't think the pass rushing prospects are as good as your typical pass rushing prospects you're discussing normally with the number 2 overall pick. So maybe you go with the guy who's the blue chipper at the non-premium position. Or maybe you go to Carnell Tate, who does play a premium position. Tate's a cut below what you normally would consider at the wide receiver spot with the number 2 overall pick, but he is the consensus top wide receiver in this year's class. Wide receiver, of course, is a very important position. The Jets have a pretty glaring need at wide receiver. So if the Jets went away from the chalk picks, I think Tate could potentially be in the mix. And then you have option number 4, which is try and engineer a trade down. And the end result would essentially be the same thing as option number 3. You'd end up with a non-Reese or Bailey player, most likely. And the 4 most likely guys you would pick would be either Tate, Styles, Downs, or Love. Either the guy at the premium position, Tate, or the 3 guys at non-premium positions who project as potential all-pros. Now, my preference would be the trade down. And I say that for a couple of reasons. Number 1, if you're a longtime listener of the show, you know I always love a trade down. I think that the way the NFL draft is built, you benefit from trading down. I think one of the biggest market inefficiencies in the NFL is the perception that trading up is a good move in the NFL draft. Now, occasionally there is a trade up that works out. I'm not saying that the hit rate for trading up is 0. I'm not saying you should never trade up under any circumstances, because if you pick your spots well, you can really do yourself a lot of favors building your team. But numbers show that you lose more than you win trading up. Trading down is a better way to go. And a lot of this has to deal with overconfidence that teams have. Teams are overconfident in their scouting ability. Sometimes you trade up for a guy you're absolutely sure of, but you miss something, or something goes wrong, or the guy you trade up for suffers a lot of injuries, like happened with the Jets with Elijah Vera Tucker. And trading down gives you extra opportunities to get hits. If you go back to 2017, there was a famous trade between the Bears and the 49ers. The Bears moved up 1 slot to get Mitchell Trubisky. The Bears were at 3, the 49ers were at 2. The 49ers traded down. And with the 3rd overall pick, they made a terrible choice. They picked Solomon Thomas. But 2 of the picks that the Bears traded the 49ers turned into star players. One was Alvin Kamara. Now, the 49ers traded the pick again. The Saints ended up with it and picked the great Alvin Kamara at the running back position. Another was Fred Warner, star linebacker. So that shows you the value of trading down, because sometimes you miss on your high picks, and adding extra picks at a later stage of the draft gives you a chance to atone for them. Sometimes that can wipe out a mistake that you make. And I know you could also counter with situations where trades up worked, but trading down more frequently results in good things for your team. And I think there's another component here. It goes back to what I said earlier. Reese and Bailey are both quality prospects. In a normal draft, they're both high first-round picks. They're both guys going in the top half of the first round. But I don't think they're normally going number 2 overall. I've discussed this a lot on this podcast over the last couple of months, but I'll say it again. You drop Arvell Reese into the 2017 draft, I don't think that it's a neck-and-neck race between him and Myles Garrett, who the first edge guy is going to be off the board. I don't think he's on Garrett's level. You drop David Bailey into the 2019 draft, I don't think there's a debate between him and Nick Bosa. I think Bosa's going number 2 overall that year. I think Bosa is going to be the first edge rusher off the board. These guys are a cut below the elite level edge rusher. And the Jets are a team that really lacks talent. You hope that some of the moves they made in free agency will improve the roster, but there's just a shortage of blue chip talent on this team. In fact, Garrett Wilson's really the only star level player left on this roster. And that means, while you can never really afford a miss in the top 5, the Jets absolutely have to get this pick right. They have to get a big time contributor. In an ideal world, you'd be adding a quarterback. If not a quarterback, you'd be adding that sort of big time pass rusher, that guy who's just like the can't miss prospect. And I hate using that phrase because there's always a chance any prospect can miss. But that guy who you feel really good is about being a superstar. I don't think that guy's there in this class. I think there are guys who could be really good. I think Arvell Reese and David Bailey could be really good. If either of those guys is the pick tonight, I fully expect one of the two. And my guess is Reese would not be shocked with Bailey. I'll root for them. I think there's a path that either of them could be excellent players in this league. But I think the better bets are the guys who play the non-premium positions. If you could move down and get extra picks and still get a blue chip prospect, even if he doesn't play the most important position, to me, that would be the best case scenario for the Jets in this class. I normally wouldn't want a linebacker who plays an off-ball role or a safety or a running back this high, but there's the perfect world and the world we live in. For the world we live in, I'd like to see the Jets trade down, get extra picks, get that blue chip guy who has a high chance of becoming a star level player. Because we could talk all we want about the needs the Jets have, certain positions where they're weak, but I think more than anything, the Jets just need star level talent. And I think trading down could give them a great opportunity to add to their stockpile of draft picks and still add a star level talent. Now, ahead here on the Locked On Jets podcast, we'll turn our attention to pick 16. I think this is very much a pick where the Jets need to have a solid plan. There's one position they should target, but they should also have a plan B in case they need to adjust.
Welcome back to the Big 6 in 60. The Cowboys have 2 first-round picks at number 12 and 20 as they look at several ways to attack the draft. Marcus Mosher and Landon McCool with Locked On Cowboys lay out the options.
The NFL draft is just hours away. We're going to talk about the best options at 20, the best options available at 12. Landon, how you feeling about the draft?
Well, I'm excited. Yeah, obviously this is what we've been anticipating for months and months, and I've got draft day on pause in the other room. I'm ready to start watching.
There you go.
I really hope we find out what's in that piece of paper in his pocket. I don't know yet. We'll see.
Right.
But yeah, I'm ready to go. Let's do this.
Yeah, we've done all the work. We're ready to go. Let's start with the pick at 12. And we've heard just about every rumor possible. The Cowboys are going to trade up to 3. They're going to trade up to 6. They're going to trade up to 9. They're going to stick and pick. They're going to trade back. I think we should go back, at least talk about some of the names that we are considering at 12. I think the most realistic high-end player that could be available at 12 would be Caleb Downs. And we're starting to see more and more mock drafts, including Daniel Jeremiah, I believe Lance Zierlein, Todd McShay, all put Caleb Downs at 12. If the Cowboys are sticking at that spot, I got to believe that's the pipe dream.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, this is not really far off from kind of what we've been saying is the best likeliest pick, right? And I think, there's been some back and forth about Mansour Delane being that, in that conversation as well. And I certainly wouldn't be upset if he ends up being the pick. I think if he gets picked over Caleb Downs, I think that's an interesting angle, but I think you could make the argument that it would be a positional situation. But the way that it's kind of unfolded these last few weeks, it feels like more and more you're not really going to get that choice. It's going to be, you'll be lucky to get one or the other. Yes. So I think if Caleb Downs is the one that rolls Downs, I think, God, that's terrible. I think it would be a great scenario. Obviously, where the Cowboys had one of the few blue chip players in this draft fall to them because of simply positional value.
And it's not super far-fetched to believe that it could happen. All you need is really 2 receivers to go inside the top 11 and at least 2 offensive linemen on top of a guy like Ruben Bain, who we're not sure the Cowboys would take at 12. And we've seen this before. Like, Caleb Downs is one of the best players in the draft, but he plays safety, and that's that's historically a position that the league just doesn't value. Now, maybe in a wonky draft like this, he could fall, but we'll see. The next guy that I wanted to mention is Mansour Delane, and this is the other player that has been mocked to the Cowboys the most at number 12, at least on the defensive side of the ball. You're seeing a bunch of mock drafts with Delane either going at 8 to the Saints, 9 to Kansas City, or 12 to the Cowboys. And it really feels like if he can get past the Saints and the Chiefs, it's pretty likely that he's going to be available at 12. And I think you and I would both be thrilled with that pick.
Yeah, I mean, again, like to be mentioned in the same breath as potentially, being a choice between him and Caleb Downs shows you how we feel about him. And I think, clearly cornerback 1, a guy who I think would be a really good fit for the defense, would absolutely be another home run pick if the Cowboys were able to get him at 12.
And I was thinking about this today. If they take Delane at 12, man, you just feel so much better about your cornerback room. You've got Delane and Deron Bland, and then behind them you've got Kobe Durant, who you feel really good about as a backup outside cornerback. You've got your developmental project and Savon Ravel, and then you even got guys like Kendrick and Kalen Carson behind them, giving you quality depth. You're still looking for that slot defender, but I just feel so much better about their secondary as a whole if you're able to get Delane at 12.
Yeah, 100% agree. And it's an area where obviously you feel like you've got a coach who has an expertise there. So you feel really solid about his ability to coach him up. Not that he needs a ton of coaching up. Yeah, I'm pretty sure he didn't allow a touchdown last year, and I don't think he had any penalties either. So yeah, I mean, I think he's a guy that's really going to be an elite player in this league. I think if he can kind of hit his ceiling and if you get him with a coach like this, it really helps that along.
All right, I wanted to mention, I think Sonny Styles, Arvell Reese, David Bailey, those would all be potential trade-up options. I just haven't seen a mock draft over the last 2 weeks where any of those guys falls past pick 7, but I thought we should at least mention them. And then Landon, after that, after Mansour Delane and Caleb Downs, it gets really fascinating for the Cowboys. And we should talk about Jordan Tyson, because I don't think you and I have had this conversation yet, because you decided to skip out on draft week. Jordan Tyson has been somebody who has gotten a lot of attention and buzz with the Cowboys. I think it was Jeremy Fowler who said the Cowboys have a very high grade on Tyson. Do you believe he could be the pick at 12 if they are wiped out on defense?
Yeah, I mean, I think it sounds like it's a very real possibility. I think that for the Cowboys, it's if they have him graded, at a tier that's above the next best defensive player, then I certainly don't love it. I don't love it at all. It would be my least favorite choice. But I think it still would be. Well, no, I can't say it. It would be my second least favorite choice. My least favorite choice would be them reaching really bad for a tier below a player just because they felt like they needed defense. So I wouldn't love it. And I do think that there is a chance that there's some smoke here and that this is an opportunity to try to get somebody to come trade in front of him or trade back or something like that. But it's a situation that I think we should be seriously considering, and I don't love it, but I also think you can't double down on bad luck by making a bad decision and reaching past a player who's not worth the 12.
I have very mixed feelings on this. I love Tyson, the player. I think if he were fully healthy, like I would have him as a top 5 or 6 player in this class, but he's missed like 35% of his career games. And I know a lot of it is stemming from one injury. I think he moves like Amari Cooper. He runs routes like Amari Cooper. Yeah. He's not great after the catch like Amari Cooper, and he gets banged up like Amari Cooper. So yeah. I've always been a fan of that style of player, and I think it fits really well with Brian Schottenheimer. I think if the Cowboys picked him at 12, I would understand it. I wouldn't love it, but I'm with you. I think the scarier option is what happens behind those guys, because if you're drafting the next highest rated defensive player, at least based on consensus boards and all that stuff, you're looking at like someone like Dylan Thieneman, who we both really like, but we haven't really heard any buzz about Dylan Thieneman and the Cowboys. After that, it's guys like Colton Hood and Keldrick Falk, and I don't think any of those guys should be the pick at 12, and I would be very upset if that was the case.
I think you mentioned that we haven't heard anything about Thieneman. I it'll be interesting to see if maybe that's intentional once we get to draft night and hear his name called.
Like if that's like the backup plan, or like, hey, if we get wiped out and we're taking Thieneman, I'll be like, okay, you know what? It's fine. I'm good with it.
If we're including Thieneman in that group of defenders that the Cowboys will take at 12, like they will take at 12, then suddenly I feel a whole lot more comfortable.
I feel so much better,
but we don't know. We haven't heard anything. So maybe, but again, maybe that's why. Maybe we haven't heard anything, because when we do hear things, it's usually because they don't like somebody, right?
Yeah. So, and we should mention a player that we've heard that maybe they don't like is Ruben Bain, the pass rusher for Miami. Now, there have been some conflicting reports out there. I know Brian Broaddus is very adamant that the Cowboys don't love Ruben Bain, but he could be another one that maybe you get on the clock and you have some of those arguments between coaches and pass rush coaches, and you find a way to get him on the roster.
Yeah, I mean, it certainly wouldn't be the first time we heard the Cowboys didn't like someone and they drafted them. So it would be not exactly par for the course, but not breaking precedent either.
All right, so just to recap, assuming the Cowboys don't trade up for Arvell Reese, Sonny Styles, David Bailey, the most likely names that are going to be picked at 12 would be Caleb Downs, Mansour Delane, Jordan Tyson. We're hoping that Dylan Thieneman and Ruben Bain are on that list. I think after that, guys like Keldrick Falk, Akeem Mesidor, and Colton Hood would be options. I would be almost shocked if it's anybody but one of the names that I just mentioned.
Yeah, and I think we will be shocked if it is one of the. I mean, we've been shocked before, and they've taken guys off of not on our short list before. So, but yeah, I agree. I think that's a good list of targets that the Cowboys could potentially take at 12.
That's all for today's Big 6 and 60. If you follow basketball, football, or college sports, the Big 3 and 30 has a half hour on the biggest news in the NFL, the NBA, and on campus, going up every weekday just like this one. Just search the Big 3 and 30 NBA, the Big 3 and 30 NFL, or the Big 3 and 30 college, wherever you're listening or watching now. Thanks again for tuning in to the Big 6 in 60.